he says in verse 9, anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is still in the darkness. Anyone who loves his brother and sister lives in the light. So he's talking about hate and love. And this new command is the command to love our brothers and sisters. That's the old command. That's the new command. The command to love one another. The command to love our brothers and sisters. But why is it called a new command and an old command? How can it be old and new? Well, it's old in three ways. It's old because it's a command God had given hundreds of years before, at the time of Moses, when he commanded the people of Israel, you shall love your neighbour as yourself. So this command to love, not just to love God, but to love our neighbour, is an old command. It goes back centuries. This is when John reminds them of it. It's not the first time that it's been given. And Jesus also repeated that command, didn't he? When he was asked on one occasion, which is the greatest commandment, he quoted two verses from the Old Testament. He said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. This, he said, is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbour as yourself. On these two commandments, he said, hang all the law and the prophets. All the other commandments hang from these. All the other commandments are simply an expansion of these two great commandments, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and to love your neighbour as yourself. So it was, this commandment was in the Old Testament. It was in the teaching of Jesus. And it wasn't new for them, because they had heard it when they first became Christians. Every Christian knows these commandments. Every Christian knows the commandment that we're to love our neighbour as ourselves. This is not a new commandment. And yet he goes on, see, he says, I'm not writing you a new command, but an old one, which you have heard since the beginning. This old command is the message you've heard. You've already heard this command, you know it. But then he goes on and he says, yet I am writing you a new command. How can it be new when it's old? Yet I am writing you a new command. Well, it was old because it went a long way back in history and a long way back in the lives of those to whom John is writing. But it's also new. There's sense in which it's new. In fact, there's three senses in which it's new. Firstly, Jesus gave it a new meaning in this, that he expanded its breadth. Because the way people have been interpreting this command is, my neighbour is my fellow Jew. The Jews have been interpreting it that way. Who is my neighbour? My fellow Jew. He is my neighbour. But then someone asked Jesus on another occasion, who is my neighbour? And he told them a parable. He told them a story. He told them the story of the Good Samaritan. You know the story. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, which was a very dangerous road. He fell among thieves. He was attacked. He was robbed. He was left for dead beside the road. And along came a priest who saw him and walked by on the other side. We don't know why. Don't know what was going on inside his mind. Maybe he thought, well, he's dead anyway. I can't help him. Maybe he thought, oh, there's robbers here. I better get going quickly before they attack me too. Then along came a Levite, who were the assistants to the priests, and he did the same. He saw the man and he went by on the other side. And then along came finally a Samaritan. And the Jews hated the Samaritans, and the Samaritans hated the Jews. For a Jew, a Samaritan was not their neighbour. For a Samaritan, a Jew was not their neighbour. And yet it was the Samaritan who went to this Jew beside the road and tended to his wounds, put him on his donkey, took him down to Jericho, and took him to an inn where he would be looked after, and who paid the innkeeper to take care of him. And the point of the parable is that there are to be no boundaries to who is my neighbour. My neighbour is not just the person who's like me. My neighbour is not just the person who lives next door. My neighbour is not just my friends and my family. My neighbour is anyone who needs my help and who I can help. That's who my neighbour is. So Jesus expands it. He says, you cannot put a boundary around the word neighbour and say those inside this boundary are neighbours and those outside are not. Anyone who is in need and whose need I can meet is my neighbour. So he expands the breadth, but he expands also the depth. He increases the depth of what it means. We read earlier, Jake read for us, was it Jake? No, it was Vivian read for us in John chapter 13. Remember? Where Jesus said, a new command I give you, that you love one another. How? As I have loved you. A new command I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you. You see, the old command is, you love one another as you love yourself. But the new command is that you love one another, says Jesus, as I have loved you. We're to love one another as Jesus has loved us. And how has Jesus loved us? Does Jesus love you? Does he? How do you know he loves you? Because he died for you, and greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for us. Jesus loves us so much that he died for us. He died for us. And that's how much we're to love one another. It's to be a sacrificial love. Now, often we